We are now in Algebra Proper, and Module 3 is about solving equations. We will solve three types of equations: linear, rational, and quadratic. A linear equation is an equation where the variables have exponent 1 only. There are no squares, no cubes, no square roots, none of that. Linear comes from the word line, and if you recall, y equal to 5x plus 3 is the equation of a line with slope 5 and intercept 3. So that's a line. Now these other equations are linear. You don't see any exponents higher than 1, and so is the third one. A rational equation is one where you can find rational expressions. That is, you will find variables in the denominator. And quadratic equations means you can find a squared variable, x squared. Quad means quad as in quadrangle, or a square, which has 4 sides, and you're squaring something. That's where it comes from. So in solving linear equations, the goal is to put the target variable alone on the left-hand side and simplify the right-hand side. So to do this, we remove the obstacles, which are parentheses, fractions, like terms on the same side of the equation, that is, uncombined like terms, or unlike terms with the target variable on the same side of the equation. So once you have the variable almost alone on one side except for the coefficient, you will take out that coefficient by dividing both sides of the equation. Now after you get the variable all alone on one side without any coefficient other than 1, you simplify the other side. And then you plug in the original to check if it's correct. So let's look at some examples. Solve for W. The obstacle is the parentheses on the left-hand side and on the right-hand side. So we use the distributive property to get rid of them. We distribute 3 and minus 5. Be careful when you distribute a negative number. So we get 3w plus 6 equal to minus 5w plus 15 plus 3w. The next obstacle is there's a w here and an unlike term. There's no w in the 6. And the same is true on the other side. So we want to combine like terms on the same side. So we add the opposite of minus 2w, which is plus 2w, and do the same on the other side. Notice that we already know that minus 2w plus 2w will be 0. So we don't really need to write the minus 2w. So we just write it here, and then it becomes 0. It disappears on the right-hand side. So now we combine like terms, and 3w plus 2w is 5w plus 6 equal to 15. Obstacle, you have on the same side of the equation a term with a w and a term without the w. So this is the unlike term, so we kick it out. We subtract 6 from both sides, and we already know that 6 minus 6 is 0, so we don't have to write it. So we just write it on the other side here. So we combine terms now, the constants, 5w equal to 9. So now 5w has the only obstacle is the 5. So we divide both sides by 5. Since we know that 5w over 5 is just w, you don't need to write the 5 divided by 5 on the left-hand side. So we just divide it on the right-hand side, and there's your answer. Now, next problem. Notice that we have fractions here. The trick when there are fractions is to look at each one and get the LCD. Denominator 3, denominator 3, denominator 2, so LCD is 6. So I multiply both sides by 6 and distribute. Okay, so minus 2/3 u times 6 plus 2/3 times 6 equal to minus 7 over 2 times 6 minus 2 times 6. So we simplify. The 3 and the 6 cancel, so we're left with 1 there and 2 there. And then minus 2u times 2, that gives us minus 4u. We cancel this as well. And we're left with 4, 2 times 2. The same thing here, we cancel. And we're left with minus 7 times 3 times u, so minus 21u. And then minus 12. Fractions are gone. So now the next obstacle is we have unlike terms on the same side of the equation. 4u and 4, they're unlike because 4 doesn't have a u. The same thing on the right hand side. So we'd like to combine the like terms. So we start with the u. We add the opposite, which is plus 21u, but we choose not to write it because we know that that will come out to 0 anyway. So we just add it on the left hand side. And then we combine like terms now, the minus 2u and 21u, which will give us 17u. Now the equation is much more simpler than the original. The next obstacle is there's a 4 here without a u and a 17u. So this is the unlike term, so we kick it out by subtracting it. Once we subtract minus 4 from both sides, this becomes a 0 here on the left hand side and a minus 4 on the right hand side. So we combine like terms. Minus 12 minus 14 is minus 16. So we're almost done. The 17u, the obstacle here is the 17. So we divide both sides by 17. So notice 17u times 17 is minus 16 over 17. We already know that this will become 1. So we just write u equal to minus 16 divided by 17. Doing it this way will help you correct errors faster. Next, the difference between this equation and the other equations is that there are two variables, x and y. But we are solving for x, so our goal is to get x alone on one side. So 10x minus 12y equal to 6. These are unlike terms. We want to keep the 10x, so we move the 12y. We add 12y to both sides. Let me write here. But again, I will not show the 12y addition on the left hand side. I will just show it on the right hand side because I know that 12y minus 12y will be 0. So in effect, it's like moving minus 12y to the other side, but it becomes the opposite. Okay, now we have 10x is equal to 6 plus 12y. We want to get rid of that obstacle 10. And we do it by dividing both sides by 10. When I divide this by 10, and I divide that by 10, I will just get x on the left hand side, so I don't really need to show the division by 10 on the left hand side. I just show it on the right hand side here. Next obstacle, we're actually almost done, except we just have to simplify the right hand side. There's a common factor, and that's 2. And you can see that by factoring out the GCF on the numerator, which is 6, and then canceling out the common factor, which is 2. So this becomes 3, and that becomes 5. And there's your answer. Now for the last one, we have 3 variables, but we are solving for x. So the goal is to put x on one side of the equation, but there are obstacles, parentheses. We get rid of them by using the distributive law. So we distribute m and get this 4m plus xm equal to y. These are unlike terms. 4m doesn't have an x, and xm has. So we kick out 4m. That's the obstacle. So we subtract it from the right hand side and get xm equal to y minus 4m. Again, I'm not showing you how the usual way is to do this. You already know that this will become 0 anyway, so you don't need to write this. It will just slow you down. And your solution will be neater if you don't do it that way. So we're now progressing towards mathematical maturity, and this is the mature way to do it. So we have x equal to y minus 4m, the whole thing, divided by m.